up last Saturday with Jingo Dornes he talked about how to build donors, how to grow partners. So I'm just going to give a review of that and an overview of that process of development. These are 3 learning tasks: understanding the process of resource development, and then learning how to set up the annual giving program. And we're going to talk about the annual fund, which is the building block of all fundraising. And then I'm going to show you how to strategize using the gift range chart. Again, this is how professionals do it in this Fundraising Institute. We learn everything, professional way of doing fundraising. At the same time, how would you look at that process from the lens of a transformational fundraiser, treating it as a ministry. Let's review the sources of funds for nonprofit organizations. Normally, there are only 3 main categories of gifts for the nonprofit. These are grants, gifts, and earned income. And if you look at your organization, if you're a church, you would have tithes and offering every week. If you have a special fundraising project like a building fund, then people give beyond their tithes and offering, and then you do bazaars and other events where you sell tickets and you sell stuff. That could be considered earned income. But earned income, as far as nonprofit organizations, can be for a school like ATS. We derive income from tuition, so that's earned income. But that's not enough to support our operational expenses. It only answers 30% of our operational budget, and the other 70% we have to raise from gifts. Gifts are unrestricted, meaning you can use it for your operational expenses. You can use it for your admin costs, like payment of salaries, payment for utilities, rentals, taxes, licenses, and what you call the general fund. Now, grants, we also have income from grants. We receive grants from funding agencies abroad and locally, but grants are usually, that's restricted, usually restricted, and it's project-based. When you apply for a grant, it's for a particular project, which normally would last anywhere from 1 to 3 years on the average. And after that, you need to apply for another grant, if you need more income to support the particular project or another project. So it's restricted, and you cannot use it for operating expenses. Now, it will be good to have all of the above so that you have a diversified source of income. You don't just depend on grant. In the 90s, majority of the NGOs in the Philippines are deriving income solely from grants. In fact, some of the NGOs in the Philippines only get support from one funding institution. So at the time, in the early and mid-90s, when these funding agencies had to leave the Philippines because there were other opportunities outside the Philippines, some of them were forced to close shop because they did not prepare themselves for the eventuality that they will lose the funder. So that's the danger of having only one source of funding. It's always better to have a mix or diversified sources of income. And I am partial for gifts because it's not only unrestricted, and because I will show you why gifts are good. Because gifts are usually from individual. An individual has, well, in Asia, it's the least developed, no? Because since majority of our NGOs and nonprofits are funded by funding agencies, by governments, or in terms of the Christian church, the Christian nonprofits, we were started by missionaries and we get missionary support for our programs. And we have not truly maximized the potential of individual giving, meaning we have not cultivated individual donors to give to our nonprofit organization. It has a large potential market, and I'm going to show you later. It's a source of unrestricted funds because when individuals give, they don't just say, okay, this is for a certain project, they just give to your organization for whatever use that you will, the fund will be used for. So it can also be a source of endowment. An endowment is a large sum of money that an individual bequeaths to an organization, and usually in the millions of pesos, and the principal stays in the bank, but the organization uses the interest out of the endowment money. Why does it increase awareness? Because when you approach a lot of individuals, then you build a bigger donor base, not just one funding institution, but you have a lot more people. And one person has a lot of influence and network. So if you have one influential person, he has maybe 25,000 other people that he can influence. And when you do individual fundraising, it increases your legitimacy, your transparency, and your accountability. And what do I mean by that? Because when you do public fundraising, inviting people to give to you, you cannot be a fly-by-night organization. You need to be a registered organization, and that increases your legitimacy. You have to be transparent because and accountable, because you need to be accountable to your donors. You need to be accountable to the public. So you have to set up certain system, internal systems of not just reporting, but also in compliance with government agencies. I like to show you, this is 6 years old, but this is from Giving USA. We don't have research such as this in the Philippines yet, but it will give you an idea of where the bulk of the 290 billion contributions are coming from. Now it's about $310 billion, no, in 2016. Where is the main bulk of money or contributions coming from? Individuals. How many percent? 73% from individuals. So it just makes sense that we put efforts and energy in cultivating individual donors. And then let's look at the rest of the pie. No, it's divided among bequests, foundations, corporations. Corporations give only 5% out of the total pie. Foundations, in the States, many of the foundations are also family foundations. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Warren Buffett, and others. They're also family foundations. So they're also people, not corporations. Bequests, these are given by individuals from their planned giving. It means that certain people, not necessarily only the older people, will give a bequest, a trust a trust fund to their favorite charity. And these are individuals. So if we add up 8% plus 14% plus 73%, that's almost 95% coming from individuals. So it really makes sense to have a goal to have large number of individuals giving to our organization. Where do they give? Where do the contributions go? The largest portion of the pie, 35%, goes to religion. Second is education. No? So I think ATS is in the right business. We're in religion and we're in education. And the rest are distributed among human resources, health, foundations, public society, international affairs, arts, and culture. So people still give to religion, they give to churches, they give to education. Look at this graph of giving. From 1970, from 100 plus billion, it has grown to 300 plus billion. And yet, research says that Christians are only giving 2 to 4% of their income. They're only giving away 2 to 4% of their income. So we have not really maximized people's giving. So we still have a lot of job to do to encourage people to give, to encourage them to be generous. And this can actually has a potential to increase 200, 300 times. If people are just faithful about tithing and giving, the 300 billion can become 600 billion or 900 billion. Let's just have a review of, because this is professional Christian fundraising, so let's just have some definition of terms. We always use the word fundraising, but development is a bigger term to use to describe all the things that we do in raising money. Because development, it was a term coined in 1924 by Ernest DeWitt Burton, who was then president of the University of Chicago. Fundraising is the actual act of requesting the gift. No, that's the transaction part. Asking for the gift, the face-to-face solicitation or the letter writing. It can be from groups of people, from individuals, from corporation, and it's a singular act that you do several times. Some would write fundraising letters 12 times a year. That's one fundraising letter every month. Churches pass the offering bags 52 times a year, right? So people have opportunity to give on a weekly basis. But in an institution or nonprofit organization, we only ask 12 times a year. Others only ask 3 or 4 times a year. So it's good to have a giving people frequent opportunity to give. So we don't have money because we don't ask. Advancement is another big term to cover an even greater scope of development because it includes the administrative functions, including public relations, marketing, alumni relations, donor relations, your publication. So advancement is broader than development. And you would see Department of Advancement normally in colleges and universities and in other educational institutions. Like at Regent University, we have a vice president for advancement. And under the vice president for advancement, we have a director for marketing, who's in charge of all the creative production and marketing. We have a director for major donors. We have an annual fund manager. And then we have somebody who's in charge of public relations and someone in charge of alumni relations because it's a university. So development is a bigger term to encompass everything that we do to raise money. That includes also public relations and marketing. Any question about the definitions? None? So in summary, this is what we studied last week, right? The process of building or developing donors. I say that development is both infrastructural and relational. Infrastructural because you need to set up certain structures in order for you to do institutional fundraising. But fundraising is also relational because it's like discipleship. Like Mike mentioned, we are actually raising up stewards who are rich towards God. So it's like a work of discipleship. And then the fundraising cycle is iterative, meaning it starts from identifying who could be your potential partners and then moving them up into becoming donors and major donors, and then you repeat that cycle. You acquire new donors again and raise them up to be stewards who give regularly to your organization. And so it's a process, it's a cycle. So the summary, I think this is what we learned last Saturday about the process of development. First, we need to identify who can be your potential donors. Second, you have to qualify them. And there are certain qualifications. Do you remember? How do you qualify your donors? We're going to have a review again. And then there are ways and ways of cultivating your donors. You do not solicit to a donor who is not cultivated. So you want to first build that rapport, build that connection, build that relationship before you solicit from your prospects. So again, development is a process where you create a favorable fundraising climate. It's 90% and only 10% fundraising. So development is a process that never ends because relationship building is a never-ending process. And there's really no final goal. Like we said in Christian fundraising, we are not just raising pesos and dollars, we are raising stewards. Many of us engage in strategic planning, so we have great programs and projects, but we stop at that. We don't make a plan for resource development. There is a budget that we prepare for every strategic plan, program, and projects that we include in our strategic planning. But normally, nonprofits do not include a resource development plan. Where will we get the funding? Unlike our counterpart in the corporate world, they know that when you have to start a business, you need to have a capital because you cannot start a business without a capital. But we don't recognize that in the nonprofit world, much so in the church or in the Christian nonprofit sector. No? So I don't know. That's the problem why we lack resources, because we don't do planning on where we will get the income budget. We have the budget for the expenses, but where to source the income budget is not planned. So we need to do strategic planning for resource development. That's why when you plan the resource development, it should be anchored on your mission and vision. This is what we plan to do for the next 5 years. These are the strategies and the programs. These are the budgets, the expenses. Where are we going to source the funding to support so that we can accomplish what we said we want to accomplish as a mission? So you need a development plan. Okay, what do we mean by development is infrastructural? What are the structures that we need to put in place in order for development to take place? Let's look at 8 strategic areas of an organization. Of course, we need to do fundraising, the actual act of soliciting the money or finding the sources of fund. And then you need to put in recruitment and retention, meaning recruiting donors and partners, and also recruiting and retaining them, keeping them, no? Not just asking for a one-time gift, but retain them as a regular partner of your organ. You must have a program for that. And I think that's what we discussed last session. Then you have public relations. Of course, you need to identify who are our stakeholders, who are our constituents, who are our prospective donors. And then you have the strategic long-range planning. That's where we articulate our vision, our mission, our strategies, our programs, our budgets, and where we will get the funding to support our programs and budgets. The organization will be composed of the governance, the board of directors, the chief executive officer, the different departments, your finance administration, the marketing and communication, and the operations. Project management, you need to have project management because you will have several projects maybe you will do simultaneously. So you need to have an understanding of how to manage several projects at the same time. That's why we study program and project management. You have to put in monitoring and evaluation. Database management, very important because you need to be able to record the names, the contact information, and other pertinent information with regards people who are giving to you. You need to be able to understand your giving history, where the money came from in the past and where is it coming from so that you can predict the trend. Financial management is a very important and a crucial structure that an organization has to put in place if we are to be transparent, if we are to be accountable. It cannot be just a mom and pop operation. We want to professionalize your system if you are to do fundraising. So these are the 8 strategic areas of an organization that we need to put in order before we can be successful in our institutional fundraising. Now, if you are a church, you don't actually need to do all of this because you have an army of volunteers in your church, but at the same time, you need to be faithful administrators. Even if you are a church, you still need to put an order, a system in place so that there is order, there is good church administration, there is good housekeeping. Even if you don't have actual public relations department, every member of your church should be the public relations officer. They're the ones inviting people into your church. Of course, financial management, you need to assign somebody who understands bookkeeping and who knows how to report to the Bureau of Internal Revenue and to accomplish the forms that you need to submit for reporting to different government agencies. Even if you are a church, you still need to do planning, right? You plan. Because without plan, then we're bound to hit just anything without a written plan. And then we say that development is relational, and that is where building disciples, building stewards, building our connection and relationship with people will come in. We want to increase our constituents. We need to increase our political base, so to speak. If you have a lot of donors supporting your organization, investing their time and money and resources to your organization, they become a strong base of your political support.